All right, everybody, welcome back. We return to you today with a live stream from the some of the comrades from the Class Consciousness Project. We are coming to you today to do a follow-up on the live we did a while back, which was talking about the launch of your party. It's not, perhaps it's not your party, perhaps it's their party, and they'll split if they want to paraphrase an old song. So joining me today to discuss the latest developments here and to talk about our perspectives on this matter and why a proper analysis of this needs to be carried out are Rick and Ian of the Class Consciousness Project. So starting with Rick, why don't you introduce yourselves to the viewers at home?
Well, I hope to God that you all know us by now if you've been following us for a while, but I'm Rick, one of the original members of the Class Consciousness Project. We've been coming up to our third year anniversary of the project now, so we've been trying to push Class Consciousness for a couple of years. We've been trying to get this through. It's nice to see people coming in the chat already. But hello, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion.
Ian?
Yeah, hi, I'm Ian. I'm a more recent recruit to the Class Consciousness Project. And I think about my third live now, so you've probably been on it before if you're a regular watcher. Anyway, evening to everyone who's currently watching.
Right, so we're coming to you live on a couple of YouTube channels and X channels, and just before we start, as a matter of housekeeping, if you've not subscribed to the Class Consciousness Project YouTube channel yet, be sure to do so. Also, be sure to give the project a follow on X. And also, if you're on Telegram, go and follow our channel on there. And that way you'll be able to keep in touch with all the different articles and other media that the project comrades are doing at the moment. So just to introduce the subject, earlier this week, late last week, there was what appeared to be a potentially lethal split emerging within your party. There's still no name for it yet, not a real one anyway, between Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana. And this was nominally about Sultana starting or launching a membership portal where people could actually become members of your party. This led to a falling out with, well, Corbyn and forces around Corbyn who didn't want to essentially do that as yet. This dispute now appears to have been resolved to a certain degree, but there still seems to be rancor between the differing camps. Now, this goes back to the foundations of this apparent new party, this alleged new party, where Corbyn, after he was booted from the Labour Party, spent years dithering around on the back benches, not doing much, launching useless, go-nowhere organisations like the Peace and Justice Project, which seems to be basically a jobs for the boys scheme, where Corbyn would go and make speeches about how wouldn't it be nice if everyone was nice, and Guardian readers would go, "Oh, isn't he great? He's such a nice man." But this got a greater head of steam behind it following the election last year of 5 independent MPs, including Corbyn, and 4 who come from Muslim backgrounds who were elected on the strength of a rebellion over the government stance and the Labour Party's stance on Palestine. And this, of course, leads to a situation where there is a viable group of MPs who could conceivably form the basis for a new party. They were joined by Zara Sultana, who suddenly discovered that Labour Party was a pro-war, pro-racist party. I mean, I don't know where she'd been hiding for the previous decade to not discover that. You could discover that by going to about one Labour Party meeting where people feel comfortable unveiling all their prejudices. But it should be emphasised that the people who most Labour Party members hate most of all is, of course, the domestic working class. But to come back to the point and bring us up to speed, Sultana appeared to try and bounce Corbyn into launching the party by arbitrarily announcing that she was now leading or going to lead this new thing. Corbyn then responded by giving an interview to that wretched little shit Owen Jones. Then she tried to bounce them into taking membership applications and signed up 20,000 people that then promptly caused this legal threat from Corbyn, and then this sort of panic, and then a coming back together again, and now there's been a launch of this formally. So before I take comment from the two comrades, what I'll do is I will just show you all the video that St. Jeremy has graced us with today, announcing the membership drive. So if you'll bear with me for just a moment, I will put that on screen for the good viewers at home. So you should all now be able to see that. Make sure that you got your volume turned up to hear the words of the man himself. So here we are.
Last Monday, your party announced plans for a founding conference, the democratic this country has ever seen. A huge conference this November, bringing together thousands of founding members, tens of thousands more, one member, one vote. Open, inclusive, grassroots-led democracy really looks like across the country. Diverse, gender balanced. Teams of volunteers are already hard at work to make sure this happens and to organise the mass regional assemblies that will be held in the run-up to the conference. That's what I'm excited about. Coming together to found a party that will fight prejudice, campaign for peace, act against climate breakdown, social justice. We've had some fought days in the last week, as you will no doubt be very aware. And to be honest, we haven't covered ourselves in glory. But what is most important is this. We all agree about the plans for the conference and the roadmap to get to it. Before all the commotion last week, the plans themselves were warmly welcomed right across our movement. People desperately want the chance for a real alternative, an alternative to poverty, to war and injustice. So let's get on with it. Today, you can turn your support into real membership. Our official membership portal is now open. Join now. Your data, your membership payments will be secure, and you will be taking this party, your party, into your hands. Because once the party is established at the conference, the role that I and other independent alliance MPs have been playing around will end. Our role is not to run the party, not to control it, not to direct it. It is merely to steward the founding of the party that will belong to the grassroots, to the members, who will make the key decisions and elect a leadership through one member, one vote. So, to all our supporters, I'm sorry for the in getting to this point. Together, all of us, let's move on to the next stage. Join today and building your party to take on the rich and the powerful, to offer real change to our country. That's what your party is really about.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed that, and are feeling as inspired as Jeremy himself was, because he looked like he was really about to, almost definitely have some emotions there. We'll now open it up for discussion. So go first to Rick. Rick, on a scale of 1 to 10, how inspired are you feeling right now?
I think it was beautiful, wasn't it? It was truly beautiful. The ambience, the I am here asking you once more kind of tack that he was doing. It was a lovely bit of hyperbole as well at the start, saying this is the most democratic thing that has ever happened in Britain. I was like, okay, mate, okay. The only thing you've ever seen is the inside of the Labour Party. So it just feels like more of the same silliness, doesn't it? It's this dramatic entrance to something that has done 100 times before.
Throwing to Ian. Ian, you're looking inspired. You're looking like you're ready to join Jeremy's crusade. Is that
well?
true?
I've got this musical worm in my head, and it keeps going something like, "It's your party. We can laugh if we want to." Yeah. Where's the form? How do we sign up? No, I mean this thing about democratic and open. He's already, him and Sultana between them. She said, "Oh, you've got to be pro-trans to join it," so that rules out about 80% of the population. Now he's saying it's going to be looking after the climate change agenda. So there's another thing that isn't open, inclusive. They've already decided before they started, haven't they? I mean, it's ludicrous that, like, they're offering real change. Well, are they going to be challenging capitalism? No. Are they going to be challenging imperialism? No. Are they going to be withdrawing us from NATO? No. Are they going to carry on supporting, the NATO proxies and of the Banderite Nazis in Ukraine and paying billions? They're not going to stop that either. So, and they say they're going to make a fair society. Well, how's that possible in capitalism? I'd like someone to explain that to me.
Well, maybe Jeremy will at some point. I wouldn't hold your breath on that one though. But we've already got an interesting question from a listener or viewer. This is from Luca, who asks, "Evening, comrades. Why do they keep stressing one member, one vote?" I think that's an interesting question. It relates to something that we wanted to discuss anyway. So just give my take quickly. It's been an obsession of, like, the Labour left for a long time, was that they wanted to get rid of, in the Labour Party, the old trade union block vote, which means when in the old days when Corbyn himself was coming up with the Labour Party, the trade union leaders used to go to a Labour Party conference and wield, like, a vote that was the amount of affiliated members they had in their union. In those days, back in the 70s, used to be like the Amalgamated Engineers Union, the AEU, or the Transport and General Workers Union would turn up and put up a sign saying 1 million votes for this measure, 1 million votes for that measure, on the grounds that, well, they had 1 million members affiliated or something like that, or 490,000 votes for this measure. So the whole thing was, like, largely regarded as a tool of, like, the Labour Party right wing, because the trade union leaders were always more reactionary and would always mostly use the block vote to side with the right against measures brought by the left. And so it's been an obsession of the Labour left to get rid of the block vote and go to one member, one vote. Funnily enough, Blair ended up agreeing with them to dilute the power of the trade union leadership in the Labour Party in the 90s and the 2000s. So that's why I think that they're part of the reason why they're obsessed with it. But I'll throw now back to Rick and ask the question, like, how democratic do you think this is really going to be? Because it sounds like a sort of Islington hippie free-for-all.
It already doesn't seem democratic from the outset. You've had this incident with Zara Sultana, who's seemed to have to force Corbyn to jump into this when there was murmurings that he wasn't ready for this. He didn't want to do this. He didn't really want to get involved as yet, as usual, stumbling over whatever came in front of him. And then there was disagreements between everything that was occurring. Apparently they made agreements to put the membership through. Then there was a different groupings to allow of the organisation, and then which Zara herself. Once again, I'm not shouting and screaming on Zara Sultana's side, but she seemed to, from what she's saying, be ostracised. And then with this release of the new membership, after she had been screamed at from the fucking heavens about releasing it early, it's been released not too long after, with links to the Peace and Justice campaign, and it doesn't seem to be Zara saying anything about it. So democracy already seems to be subverted, because I'm sure there's people in her camp that don't want to, aren't in agreement with certain things that are happening. So it seems already very colluded. And with the fact that Corbyn has brought on essentially the vast majority of people he used in Labour as his little crew, David Miller wrote something about he wanted to put all of them into the organising body, which was blocked. So they he wanted to put every single one of his little followers into this organizing body, which just creates a cabal of organization, which it halts all democratic decisions. Even if you take every vote from the floor and then you take it to the main organizing body of whatever that looks like in the end, and then everybody there is a Corbyn part of the little Corbyn cartel, then it's not democratic, essentially, is it? It just feels like there has been something, and then they realised that to control this, they need to use the usual bureaucratic measures that they used in the Labour Party to make essentially a Labour Party Mark II. Adding to that, Ian pointed out a few people that wouldn't join because of the things that Zara has said. They've also blocked anybody from joining who has affiliation or membership to another party or another group. Now that blocks half the people that have been rearing and screaming about this party. There's groups like the Community Independent. So what do? Do they have to leave these groupings that they have created and then offered their support with all their followers? Do they have to leave them to join? It all seems very, very, very iffy in my book.
Cheers, Rick. Comment coming in from Liam Stoll in the who's watching on YouTube. He says it's the political version of the Mercury Music Prize. No one cares outside of London and
Very
the BBC. Very good comparison there, comrade. Ian, your reaction to Jeremy Corbyn's claim that it's going to be the most democratic of the party that has ever existed. It's going to be Athens, but with more slaves. Ian.
I just wanted to thought the Mercury Music Prize was related to my bit of singing at the start, but obviously no.
No, I was too good for the Mercury, Ian.
That was terrible. I apologise to everybody who had to suffer it. No, I'm going to give a bit of a long-winded answer, but it's I've long thought that St. Jeremy is, since he started this, that he's working for or with the state on this. I'm absolutely convinced. And at the moment, the shit show in Britain, they're looking for scapegoats for it. And the scapegoats they've picked on are the Tory party and the Labour Party. Well, they kicked the Tory party into touch with reform at the last election, which was clearly getting a push. And Farage was on every single news program you could ever find. And now they've got the liberal right sorted, and now they need to sort the liberal left. Hence, Sir Jeremy is called, and he's got together his group of independents and brought Sultana on board. But have you noticed this split is between top down and bottom up? And as Rick said, Sultana is on the right side of the argument. I mean, if you take it to its conclusion, both are wrong, because they're not going to be able to change the system in this country from within by the parliamentary route. But you can see with Corbyn, he's brought in all his advisors near enough, all of them with all sorts of different connections that David Miller reveals in his tweet. And I'm not going to try and remember them because I can't. I've only read it once. But they were all with him when he was leader of the Labour Party, and that worked out well. They brought him in. He's the one who stopped Sultana, and now they've kind of made up in some way. But it's definitely the state want this organisation. They want to kill the Labour Party, and which they will do if they survive. I mean, it's gonna get absolutely slaughtered anyway at the next election. But they're going to turn around and say, look, those two old parties, they're the buggers that messed everything up. Now we've got two bright, new, shiny parties, one on the left and one on the right. You can trust them with your future. God help us if we do. But yeah, the state wants a party that's easy to control. The Labour Party were easy to control. They just managed to slip people into senior union positions and get a few plants in there like the Keir Starmers of this world. And they can control it. So the state are going to want this party to be top down. And as Corbyn's just been saying, and Sultan, they both decided what views aren't welcome. Basically our views aren't welcome. And it's just a great big scapegoat to cover up all the mess that we're in, and to get the failing system off the ropes for a few years while they try and figure out whether they can find another way out of it, like destroying us all in a world war. It's about I can't see any way they're going to get out of the mess that they're in. But yeah, I just think it's he's definitely working with the ruling class on this.
Can I just add to what you're saying there? When you talk about how complicit that Jeremy is within British capitalism, which he has been for 60 odd years. But there's also an interesting factor of a fella called James Schneider, who's supposed to be one of his advisors that he has had for a very long time. If I remember correctly, I read somewhere that his wife is actually an advisor to Keir Starmer, which is very interesting. So this is a person who has still links to the Labour Party, talking to ex-Labour Party members, offering the same advice that was advised before. So it's still got these people behind pulling all the strings. I don't know the rest of them that are in it, but there's also links to the likes of Just Stop Oil, which let's be honest, Just Stop Oil is a way of making protests look ridiculous. Yeah. Yeah, I'll just end. I'll end there, to be honest, before I carry on rampaging.
Well, we'll rampage more in just a moment. I mean, I wanted just to first of all say thanks to all 209 of you who are watching right now. Good to have you all with us. I'll come to some more comments from viewers in just a moment, but just to add further, I mean, because I've been around the trade union movement for a number of years. I've been to a number of trade union conferences, all of which proclaimed their democratic nature. Trust me, there's a way for a leadership to get the result it wants whilst talking a lot about democracy. There's various ways you can do that. And I find Corbyn to be phenomenally dishonest like on this subject, because he's talking about how, oh, myself and the group of MPs who've launched the party, well, we're not leading anything, it's down to you. That's garbage. Because, like, first of all, we know, thanks to the fact that this guy's still got a cult that follows him around, that he'll be elected the leader of this outfit unless he specifically refuses to accept it, which I doubt that will happen. Secondly, like, the idea that you can have this member-led organization, purely member-led organization, is not something that, as Ian pointed out, that the British state is going to tolerate. And it's not something that the Corbyn's little clique is actually interested in. Now, I went through a sort of example of the kind of democracy these people are in favour of with the Old People's Assembly movement, if anybody remembers that, which has been around for a while now. That was basically started by like the TUC and others who came together to form basically a giant series of talking shops, which appeared to give people a voice, but in reality were essentially just giant exercises in absorbing dissent and basically pushing it back at that stage 10 years ago towards the Labour Party, because that's what really it was all about. It was all about getting the people who went to these things to go towards a predetermined destination, a destination which had long been which had been decided when the thing was founded. So what will happen with this conference will be that a lot of people will be allowed to sound off on whatever issue that they feel like talking about. And then in the end, the leadership will say, that's great, and here's the policies. The policies, by the way, they're already written. They're already written. The likes of James Schneider and the networks that he's involved in will have already got the policies. The membership will be allowed to indulge themselves in a conference, which I bet is already stitched up largely who the delegates are going to be, and they'll be asked to vote on things that are predetermined by the leadership. So I find it phenomenally dishonest from Corbyn to go and pretend that the ordinary member is going to be leading this process. That is just simply not the way that the British left and the Labour left has ever operated. And Corbyn's a Labour left man to his absolute core. He only left the Labour Party because they kicked him out. Further, just to the point about Roger Hallam and the Umbrella Organisation and all these different, like, entirely undemocratic groups which are forming your party, like, to be associated with him in particular and the whole Just Stop Oil, climate change brigade, who like basically were deployed by the state to justify further repressive measures. and to basically make the protest less appealing in the eyes of the working class. Well, if it's associated with him, how much of an appeal is this going to have to the wider working class outside of like the Labour aristocracy and the left petty bourgeoisie? It's not. Because what will happen is if this thing survives and runs in an election, all of the press will just find these people, these clowns that are like Hallam and others who are going to be associated with it and say, look, you know, left-wing lunatic says we all must eat carrots for the next century in order to stop climate change, or something like that. Or Roger Hallam glues himself to, I don't know, the slip road on the M6, or a London Underground train or something. And because these people already look ridiculous, they have no real appeal outside of very small sort of left areas of the country. Whereas if you actually were serious about wanting to do the things that Corbyn says he's in favour of, well, you need the much broader layers of the working class that aren't political at the moment, or not big P political, that either don't vote or might even like be quite right wing in some respects. Now, it's not a matter of going out there and pandering to that, but it's a matter of fact that like Corbyn doesn't appeal to those people. He didn't the first time around. He won't this time around, because a lot of the working class are repulsed by this kind of NGO style junior management rhetoric that like these people come out with. They don't like it. They don't want to follow it. And the fact is that the Labour Party itself has actually been losing enthusiasm amongst the working class for over 60 years. So why then would the working class go back in with something that looks like the Labour Party, which they hate?
Yeah, definitely.
So I'll stop there and just see if any either Rick or Ian, did you want to add anything else?
I just wanted to add something like to what you say. It's not aimed at the working class; it's aimed at the activist level. It's essentially back once again to the thing that comes out every year is just unite the left. It's like, what is unite the left? What is that? You know, there's half the left is so complicit within British capitalism that, you know, it's destructive. We don't want to unite the left. We want to unite the working class. We want to get people of our class together. Now, the likes of St. Jeremy and these so-called establishment lefties, or left of imperialism, as Ian has used before, they don't understand that they can't reconcile the class contradictions by going to the ruling class and asking for reforms, cap in hand, asking for these little droppings, and try to change and try to move towards what their version of socialism is. It's just implausible completely. And I think most of them know that. I think they really do. So it's created in such a way just to confuse and disrupt. You've gone mute there, mate.
Ian, did you want to come back?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that this is the ultimate in progressive liberals' big tent politics. I mean, what they're trying to pull in the metropolitan left, the liberals, the wokes, the Greens, and a splattering of the professional splitters, the Trotskyites, and all these strands of politics are all very well represented already. We've got the Greens, the Lib Dems, the Labour Party, and various other of this liberal aligned stuff. And it seems like they're almost designing it for Islington. I mean, it's going to go down wonderful. They'll get huge majorities in Islington, but it isn't going to appeal to the people who really need a new political party. And if you look at the last general election, a third of the registered voters didn't vote. Quite a few people didn't even register to vote, and people like myself, and I'm sure comrades on here, we went along and put a great big cross through the ballot paper because there was nothing on there for us. It's they're going to. I mean, Corbyn and Sultana and all these advisors are not middle class people, and they clearly haven't got a clue what is in the middle class, what is in the working class. Believe and what we stand for and what we're looking for. We're not looking for all this kind of stuff. We're looking for somebody who's going to make real material change on the ground for us, and they're not doing it. They're not. There's no way this big tent thing is going. It's a recipe for dividing and squabbling and falling out, which is why they want top down top-down leadership from the MP side. You know, I was going to say something else, and it's just slipped out of my head because I've got a headline.
Well, we'll come back in a minute, Ian. Let's get into some more comments from the viewers here.
There's some cracking names in that comment section. Bloody hell.
We've got Chuarono here, who says green scam, art scam, animal scam, gender scam. While the proletariat are seen as less than animal beings, these creatures want to use the power of the proletariat to only become new elites, broke failures. I think fair comment. Irish Partisan, our correspondent in Minsk, Belarus, says, can't believe there are still people who are still buying into the St. Jeremy of Islington cult. Well, there you go. We also have Joseph Moss in the comments. Hello to you, comrade. Hello to Mark Pugliese, who asks, why are you guys saying evening isn't even free yet? Because there's more countries in the world than the United States, mate. And this is one of them. Welcome to Perfidious Albion. You'll never leave. Chuarono comes back again and says, Just Stop Oil is just a tool to increase profit of the bourgeoisie, aim to create scarcity through green scam and up the prices. All their arguments are based on fake model-based studies. Maybe Ian, you'll want to come back on that in a minute. Ray Glover says Starmer and Badnock are obviously trashing the old legacy parties under the orders from their Zionist masters. Their plan is to move the Overton window further to the right, giving Farage power. Interesting. Johan Krober says, please no democracy. I want the dictatorship of the proletariat. It's more democratic anyway. Which I think is a very good, if slightly jokey comment there. Paul Verdi says, building illusions, misleading the working class. The Office of Secular Quranism, which is a fascinating title there, whoever you are, says, left or right, we should support a one-party state. I think there's a lot more to it than that. And Chuarono says, democracy is just a word to hide the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. And we've also got here, Liam comes back again, Liam Stoll, and says, it's party like the other liberal parties. Their policies are largely emotional statements rather than policies based on economic realities for working people. So, Rick or Ian, did you want to come back to any of the stuff said there by the viewers and listeners?
I wanted to come back to what I was saying before, actually. What was that question you said I might want to answer? I've forgotten it. I can't remember what it was.
There's a guy, Chuarono says, he said art scam, gender scam, climate scam. It's all just scams to increase the profits of the bourgeoisie.
No, I can't argue with that. What I was going to say, what I was trying to get to before was, it was about Corbyn. He's a man who has never appealed to the working class. And if you think back to 2017, Pete Corbyn, they had a general election there where there was a huge swing to the Labour Party. And while they were piling up votes in the suburbs and in university cities, in old industrial districts, what they gave the label the red wall districts, their majorities were falling, and in quite a few cases, which includes Mansfield, Stoke South, and the Copeland area of Cumbria, they actually lost seats while they were gaining huge majorities elsewhere. He just doesn't appeal. This kind of liberalism, people in the working class, they've all worked out that you can change the party in power, but you don't seem to be able to change the policies. And I recommend everyone read Lenin's State and Revolution, and you'll understand exactly where we're coming from and why it doesn't work. It's I forgot what I was going to say again. I'm terrible, aren't I? I've got a head like a sieve. But anyway, that's enough now. Anyway, I'll pass it over to.
Well, Rick, did you want to come back on anything?
Oh, mine's only simplistic. With Liam Stoll and Sid Hatfield basically said what Sid has made in a very small point there, emotional hyperbole. They are just trying to get this loving feeling out to people saying that of the good and the bad. You know, the bad is reform, the bad is the reactionaries, and the good is us. We want to do good and great things. We want to create cucumber jam and give you free internet. There are essentially reforms that still won't happen as well. You won't even get free internet. They won't. This time of capitalism and decaying capitalism, there is no chance of any single reform that will cost any that will slacken their profit margins. So yeah, it's just all emotional nonsense just to try and win you over with smiles and happiness.
Well, yes, and also I think there's something that needs to be said about the trajectory of this thing. Now, latest opinion polls said that put Reform on 28%, Labour on 23%, Tories on like 20%, and the like Liberals like just slightly behind that. So your party, of course, haven't placed yet because they're not formally a party. Now, assuming that they take a certain chunk of the Labour vote, which is what they probably will, and if they even get to that point. But what they'll probably do is to take what's left of the left vote away from Labour, meaning that we will probably still, if things stay on the current trajectory, be in a situation at the next election where Reform will be the largest single party. But I want to call comrades' attention to this tweet by the Saint himself yesterday, where he spends a lot of time denouncing Reform, Farage, etc. He spends more time doing that than he does criticising the Labour Party, because, of course, he is a Labour man through and through. Now, he says here, I am disgusted by Reform UK's threats to people who have built a life in this country. They are coming for our neighbours. They are coming for our colleagues. They are coming for our friends. We are at a dangerous moment. This hatred cannot be appeased. It must be defeated. Now, I wanted to say two things about this. First of all, Reform and Farage, yes, of course, say a lot of stuff. The Labour Party's done a lot of this stuff, for not just in the last year, which they've been in power, but for decades and decades and decades. The Labour Party's been passing racist immigration policies that are specifically designed to engender more divisions within the working class. Labour Party did that 20 years ago. By David Blunkett's own admission, that was the game that they were playing. When St. Jeremy was sat in the Labour Party, mumbling occasional objections, but still calling on people to vote Labour, of course. Secondly, this kind of messaging, this kind of like, oh, stop Farage, stop Farage, stop Farage. What that is designed to lead to is not a government led by Jeremy Corbyn, which will, in my view, never happen, but positioning for ultimately a horrendous Frankenstein's monster of a coalition between your party, the remains of the Labour Party, the Liberals, the Greens, and possibly even the band of crooks from where I live now, the SNP. This has been a dream of like sort of liberal left types for as long as I can remember. And this seems to be where the Saint himself wants to go. Coalition to stop the fascists. And final point, like anyone who tells you that fascism comes from, Nigel Farage or even like from fascist organizations that exist in the country is selling you a line of bullshit. Fascism and the racism that fuels it, and it doesn't come from a few racists down a pub. It comes from the ruling class. It comes from the institutions of the state. So don't believe anybody like Corbyn who tells you it's because of nasty people with a few bad views. No, it comes from the ruling class itself. So I'll throw back now to Rick and Ian. Did you want to come back on any of that?
Go on, you go first, mate.
Well, this thing about they always have to have an enemy. They always have to have some great threat in that. Before it was get the Tories out. And now everyone's saying, oh, Starmer's no different. Oh, look, they're fascist. Now we've got someone else to aim. Forget all the issues that matter to working people. Just get them out. And as Alex quite rightly said, fascism is a tool that the ruling class use only when they feel an existential threat to the state. And that only ever happens, and there's only ever been fascist regimes where there's been a large working class movement and large communist party. The other set of concessions that Corbyn alludes to is the kind of concessions we got after the Second World War, when a lot of trained soldiers came back, having lived through the depression of the 1930s, and they were not prepared to come back after putting their lives on the line to defeat Hitler, come back to the same old shit here before. So that the ruling class felt they had to throw a few crumbs off the table to them. And if you think back over time, as particularly after the fall of the internal coup in the Soviet Union that brought down communism there, all those reforms, as the fear recedes, so do the concessions. They withdraw them all, one after the other, because the spectrum of imperialist politics goes from left-wing social democracy to fascism. It'll cross into illiberalism to maintain the state. And this having some kind of scary image in the distance, it's a fake. They really haven't got anything to say. What are they going to do? You know, apart from have us all wear rainbow-coloured clothes and, you know, take petrochemical products out of agriculture so that we can't feed ourselves anymore because the crop yields fall massively. I mean, they've got absolutely no answers at all. And I can see they're going to stand at the next election because the ruling class want this to happen. They need a new left of centre party, a new left liberal party. I would put money on it, the next general election, the turnout's no higher. Or if it is, it'll be marginal. It might be a bit more because they're going to get 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. And being young and naive like we all were at one time, they probably all rush out with enthusiasm and think they're changing the world, just like I did when I was 18. You know, it's the kind of foolishness we all go through in life. But I do not think that those people who didn't vote, the people in working class communities, are going to be enthused by this at all. They're just going to look and think it's just repackaged more of the same.
Yeah, I'll jump straight in there, mate. I think you're entirely correct there, because this does not appeal to the working class. It does not. As once again, they're appealing to the left, so it won't change the voting numbers. Maybe there will be a surge within student communities where, you know, the Trotskyism lays its claim, but I don't fear. I don't fear reform any more than I fear the likes of the Labour Party and the Tories, because essentially they are just apparatus of the ruling class. They come and shout their slogans, but essentially, as was alluded to previously, they all have the same policies. They all do the same thing. Now, fascism is finance capital's reaction to an existential threat to their class. So that there is no threat. So they will maybe shout slogans which appear fascist and send all the immigrants home or do this and do that, but there is no severe existential threat as we stand. Now, our material conditions are falling rapidly. The last 10 years, we spoke about it before, our material conditions have become worse and worse and worse in a very, very quick pace. And it is only when we get a proper movement of our working class that they will fear that the class contradictions will become so heavy that they will have to look at something, a move on into fascism. But right now, it's not there. It's definitely not there in Britain.
Can I just make another point about that? I totally agree with what Rick said, but we've got to come to a realization that the primary contradiction in politics is not left and right. It's between imperialists and anti-imperialists. And there was a fantastic tweet, you know, Tara in a Morbid Symptoms account said that we need a decisive sectarian split, which I took to mean exactly that we've got to split along lines. Are you a tool of imperialism, or are you trying to change the system? Because it seems to me that this left-right thing, I mean, its origins are in a bourgeois French Revolution, which, yes, was progress at the time, but it's no longer really relevant. That's just purely within liberalism, and liberalism is the problem. So we've really got to make it clear. This is why we've had criticism from people who really haven't got any understanding of it. Why aren't we all in favour of having a broad united left, from Marxist-Leninists all the way to wokes? It's just not going to happen because our politics are completely different. They don't seem to understand that you can't get change even with Benite social democracy. You're not going to get changed because you've got to ask permission, and they're not going to give you permission. And imperialism is the imperialist economic system, the system that's exploiting for super profits countries in the global south, preventing them from independent economic development. And they bring that money home to support a collapsing system. And it's, as you can see in Africa, it's falling apart. It can't go on much longer. So we really need to define politics in terms of not left, right, but imperialism and anti-imperialism. And until people understand that, we're going to carry on with people being duped into, oh, they're fascist, or they're Tories, or that's Starmer, we've got to get rid of them. I just think we need a program of education, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that's a good pivot point for us to talk more about like what we as the project are all about. But first of all, I will go back to comments from the viewers and listeners. Luca asks, is there a chance that what's happened at the top will push some frustrated Your Party members to organise in a more serious way in their communities? I'll just answer that briefly and ask Ian and Rick if they want to comment on it. I think that what those of us who are outside of this need to do, and we need to realise, and I think we do, that there will be some people who are quite genuine that are drawn to this, and understandably so. I think what we need to do is to point out that, look, they're not wrong to want a change. It's just that you need to understand the nature of the system you're going up against. Decaying imperialism is not reformable. Like the kind of like tinkering around the edges that Corbyn wants to do is not going to be able to fundamentally change. It doesn't even intend to fundamentally change the system. The thing is, though, that the system's so rotten, it can't tolerate even the tiniest change that Corbyn's talking about. And here I pivot into the point of this project, which is that we've seen the sort of petty bourgeois left parties launched across Europe over the last 20 years, all of which disintegrate as soon as the ruling class puts the pressure on them. Big example. Die Linke in Germany just turned into a horrendous woke atrocity. Syriza in Greece come into power on a wave of enthusiasm, saying that they were going to save Greece from like the ruination that was going to be inflicted on them by the Germans, the French, the British, and the American bankers. What did they do? Turned around and did exactly the opposite. They enforced the will of the bankers. Why? Because these people don't have the kind of perspective that you need. They didn't prepare the Greek working class for the kind of struggle that would be necessary to defeat the international banking interests that they were up against. They pretended that by electing a government in Athens that they could somehow negotiate with the European Union. Well, you don't get to negotiate when there's a gun pointed to your head, basically. That's not a negotiation, which is what even Yanis Varoufakis has admitted to. They didn't prepare anybody for the kind of struggle that would need to be waged to even get like tiny reforms. So as a consequence, when the ruling class said, no, fuck off, basically Syriza had no answer because they had no way and also didn't want to mobilize the Greek working class to essentially defend the country. They didn't want to do that. Same is true for Podemos in Spain. Same is true for the MES, that's the French supposedly united front. It's just a united front basically of like petty bourgeois leftists. The same will be true here because they won't be able to get the allegiance of the working class and they won't be able to actually mobilize the working class. So even if they got into government, they'd be Liz Truss in about 8 seconds. Rick, anything that you want to talk about with regard to like how this feeds into what us as a project?
Yeah, I can do that. I just want to apologise to anybody here that he shouted from my house. Then there's small little people that don't pay taxes screaming in from the bedrooms. So yeah, like when you're talking about how these ideas fail, maybe you look back to something we discussed before. Is Allende in Chile? He failed to arm the working class. He failed to arm them with knowledge and against the violence that will be bestowed upon them by the imperialists. And it was, and it most seriously was. And so many people were killed, and just to remove a slightly socialist reform movement. So we need to what we created the project, the idea was just to give people this understanding of the facts of imperialism, of the facts of capitalism, especially in Britain, the oldest capitalist country. We try to offer a real class analysis to every situation, and it's severely lacking. The class struggle is problematic in Britain because the class consciousness is severely lacking. So that's what we really try to do. We try to get this out to people, not the left, not the left. The left can read if they want, but we want to get to the working class people and speak to them and explain why these things are happening from what we know, what we understand, because this understanding is there. It's available, and people can get to it already, but it's pushed aside. It's made ridiculous. People, the left don't help. The left don't encourage people to understand. They get to the ballot box and vote us, we're all right. So yeah, the communities within the working class will not look at this and see as saviour. They've already made their decision. They've already understood that voting gets them nowhere. So they will continue to do so.
Thanks, Rick. Ian, do you want to come in with anything else?
Yeah. I mean, before I talk about the project, this betrayal by so-called reformists or leftists, it's got a long history, hasn't it? I mean, the First World War was a classic example. Every single social democratic party, but with one exception, which was the Bolsheviks in the Soviet Union, decided that they were going to go all chauvinist and nationalist and sign up for an inter-imperialist war. We saw it with the general strike, when the strike was snowballing, it was getting bigger, and all of a sudden the Labour Party and the TUC panicked and pulled the rug in a winning fight that they didn't want to win. We saw it with the reaction to the miners' strike. We've seen all those examples you were saying in Europe. But getting back to the project is, we know that working class people in this country and elsewhere in the imperialist West are desperate for change. It's not their fault that they haven't been provided with the education. They read the papers, they watch the news. They even read a few political magazines like the New Statesman, and they just get more of the same. What we try to do, we do articles as well as lives and TikToks, but we do articles and we try to discuss these issues, but then we try to link in about where the mainstream leftist, if you like, so-called progressives, where they're getting it wrong, and we try to point people into the correct way of thinking, the way where they could get change if only they took the time to do a little bit of reading, a little bit of digging for themselves. Then they could realize that the imperialist system is moribund and it's on its way out. And if we're not careful, we could eventually end up in fascism, because we could end up with serious unrest, and then they will bring the British version of Mussolini, whoever that might be in. And it's I mean, the thing with the leftist political parties, none of them believe in education. And they're terrified of education. And I imagine most people watching this realize we're all members of the CPGBML, and we do have education. It's one of the key planks of what we do. We're all activists. We're all out on the streets, active on most weekends in various places, and we sit down and we learn and we apply what we learn to the real life world. We don't just read books so we can be well read and erudite. We read them because it's a practical help when you get into a debate with someone who isn't convinced. If you learn the theory of it, then you're more able to persuade some people, though not all. Some people are impossible to persuade. I mean, we're just a small blog of working class people trying to enlighten as many people as we can. But we do our best, and we're very grateful for people who take the time to read the stuff and listen to us on these lives, because we think we've got a message that's important to make.
A decent analysis, a good book, a good education, a good Marxist education is just as powerful as any gun.
Yes, and for legal reasons, we won't be mentioning guns again on this podcast. But we got some interesting comments in the chat from Tara from Morbid Simpsons Media, who says, she's going to sign up to your party and trying to go undercover to their conference in November, and is going to go as a non-binary furry and demands to be censored. Well, Tara, if you go like that, they'll probably make you leader. So be careful what you wish for, comrade. But just on the question of the project, I mean, there is a tradition, or there was a tradition in this country of working class leadership from the ranks of the class itself, not from the likes of the trade union leaders, who, if you read the history, were always as shit as they are now. They were never particularly good. There was periods when there was a few more left-wingers, but most of them were always garbage. It was Ian there mentioned the general strike. General strike was powered by working class militancy from within the ranks of the trade unions and from within the workplaces and communities, where there were generation after generation people who were either educated through the old Communist Party or who were self-educated, sort of class-conscious workers who fulfilled the role of like worker militants in their union branch, in their workplace, in their community. And those were the people who really, I would say, played the leadership role for a long time in the British working class. These are the people who like made up the minority movement, made up the shop stewards movement and things like that in the post-war period. And it's that educated working class, politically educated working class, which every government since really the middle 70s and probably before has wanted to make sure was eliminated and didn't return. Because there's nothing more dangerous than a working class which is actually politically educated, organized, and actually willing to fight en masse for even on the reformist basis. That would become a threat. The British ruling class, as early as the 18th century, even regarded literacy as a threat. Now they regard like political literacy as a threat. Because if you start to understand that everything's a scam, if you start to understand that everything that they're telling you is a lie, and you became aware of like your class position in the society and what then that means and how that necessitates struggle, then you're very dangerous all of a sudden. So we aim to, in our own small way, play our part in the re-emergence of new layers of leaders inside the working class. And that process is going to have far more of a positive impact upon our class's ability to struggle than some bunch of petty bourgeois leftists sitting around droning on about universal basic income or carbon net zero for the production of baked beans or something like that. That's the much more important question here. How do we help aid the re-emergence of real working class leadership again, which means leadership centered in the community and the workplace? That isn't through, the activities of the fading union bureaucracy, British left and Labour aristocracy. It really isn't. All right, so we're hitting the hour now, comrades. We have done well on the viewers. We have, let me just see, 282 people watching us live. This is excellent. But I wanted to then throw to Rick and Ian for like final comment and summing up of the points made tonight.
I'll jump in. I think it's been a good discussion. It's one that we've had several times. Our last podcast was on this, our last live. It's important that we understand, and it's important that we understand that there is no good and bad. The British establishment, the capitalists, they have their tentacles in every single movement that will lead the workers away from class consciousness. So the likes of the Your Party, just because they're saying all the right things, don't think that they don't have the state actors within it, or some people are complicit within this system. Yeah, just like the right. The left is just as complicit as the right at it, and in some ways even worse so, because it's so insidious how it works. So it's all about the working class just educating themselves. Like the old adage was, if you want to talk politics, you talk to a miner. Our industries are dead. Our industries are gone. but the working class is still here, the proletariat is still here, and we just need to raise our level of class consciousness, and hopefully we can play whatever little part in it, and hopefully everybody in the chat can too.
Cheers, Rick. Ian, final word to you.
Yeah, I agree with what Rick said. And the thing is, it is true that our industries have disappeared, and that the imperialists they've deliberately tried to keep everyone in the dark, tried to keep everyone ignorant, and try to put up false gods here and there and false devils here and there. But with a planned socialist economy, we could revive our industry. We can't do it under capitalism. We can't do it while working within the imperialist economic system. But it is possible. A better future is possible, and it's quite difficult because people in our class, a lot of them have not. People like us are kind of just politically motivated and political anoraks in many cases, like I've always been. And there is hope, but people have got to realise that the hope doesn't rest with your party or any of the other imperialist parties that think that they can. What was it? I heard a quote Jyoti Brown said. Harpel said that you could elect 650 Karl Marxists to Parliament, and you still wouldn't be able to get a socialist state, because you can't change it from within. And if you made serious steps towards doing it, the tanks would hit the street anyway. So yeah, there is hope, if only that we could get the masses enthused and get them to understand that there's no future in imperialism and in imperialist parties. And it's bloody hard work, and we've got to get out and try, as Lenin said, to get down deeper to the masses. Out of the movement to the masses is a simplified term of it. And we just do what we can. We're a very small organisation, and we're affiliated with all members of a small party, but we do what we can. But there is hope if people are prepared to take the time to learn about it and educate themselves and understand the issues.
All right. Thanks, comrades. Both really good contributions there. And thanks to everybody who's been in the chat tonight. Really active discussion there. Thanks to the questions. We will be doing more of these in the future. So what we might do at some point, if the comrades are keen, is we might just run an hour-long Q&A in the future to get some more of your questions in the future. I'm sure that many in the chat would appreciate that. So thanks, everybody who's tuned in tonight. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and the channel on X if you haven't done so already. We'll be back again with you soon. Be sure to check out our websites for more articles, etc., and analysis. But until next time, it's goodbye from me from an undisclosed location in Scotland.
Goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye for me as well.